We have met. We have met before, right?
Yes, don't remember me. That you told me that I look like Picasso.
Like Picasso. I was gonna say you remind me of somebody. I couldn't. Yeah, that's right. I told you, and you do.
Yes, yes. Today, this interview will be for this magazine. This is Rock.
Very good. Okay.
This
All right,
magazine,
Picasso. Let's go, Picasso. Pablo.
Pablo. So, perfect. I'm recording and I'm going to start, okay? So, my name is Tony González, and today we are talking to Wolf Hoffmann from ASEP. Hello, Wolf.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Perfect. Fine. Thank you. So, we are here because you will release a new CD called Humanoid. That is your album number 17. And tell me, how do you feel writing new music after so many years?
Yeah, it's a mixed emotion. I mean, on one hand, I'm always excited. On the other hand, it's always also a lot of work because it doesn't get easier with time. Just when you say we've made 17 albums, that's a lot of songs we've written and a lot of stuff we've already published. So it doesn't get easier with time because you need something that inspires you and something that you feel excited about. And you can't help but compare yourself to all the things you've already done. You know, it's in the back of your mind. You always think like, is this good enough? Is this too close to what we've already done? Or what does that actually mean? And so things like that, you know, because when you're young and you're starting out and you're 20 and you make your first album, anything goes, you know, it's all free for all. But now if you after so many albums, it doesn't get easier. But I think we achieved the I think mission accomplished, I hope.
To me, is interesting that you are releasing albums really frequently. So maybe every other year you are releasing a new CD because to me,
Yeah,
yes,
every 2-3 years. Yeah, of course.
yes. And I remember Too Mean to Die. And I am thinking that how can you write this kind of songs just in this moment when most of the band stay 2 years, 3 years, 4 years without new release?
I guess it all depends on your own mindset and where you are in life. I guess we still feel like we're full in the middle of it. I think it to keep the momentum going, it's important to have new material, just to challenge ourselves and to also give the fans something to new and exciting to talk about. You know, I think it's too early to say, okay, we're retired and we just play the old songs. I hope that day never comes, but I don't feel like this is where we are right now. So it just feels natural to create new stuff and, you know, keep the whole thing going.
Do you think that it's necessary for a set to write new music instead of playing only the songs that make the band famous?
I don't know that it's necessary, but it feels good. You know, maybe it's not necessary, but who cares what's necessary? We do what we like to do, and we think it's a good thing to do for the fans. You know, I mean, you could ask yourself, is music necessary or is accept necessary? It's all just a luxury in life in a way. You know, it's just what we do, and so yeah. But I think, like, to answer your question in a way, I think it is good to make new albums. It's important.
As I told you, I consider that the answer was yes, because, for example, when I go to a live concert, so I see that a pandemic, zombie apocalypse are songs that the people enjoy as good as Restless and Wild or things like that. Yes,
Sure, I agree. Yeah.
yes.
And the thing is, to me, what's important to know, I think the best songs are even maybe not written yet. I think I always try with each album to get better and better. I'm not trying to just, you know, say, okay, we've got these old songs, they're great, so now we don't even have to try. Nobody's gonna like the new songs. I never think that way. I always think like, ooh, this could be the best one ever.
And are big differences among Humanoid and the previous albums?
Yeah, I mean, every album is a sort of a time capsule in a way. It's like this is where we are at this day and age in 2024 now. So we're 3 years past the last album, and the band has developed, the taste has developed, the world has developed. Now everybody's talking about artificial intelligence and all these things, and that's why we named the album Humanoid, just to sort of have something that is current and something that fits into now. I think if we would have done an album 10 years ago with Humanoid, people would have said, huh? Makes no sense. It's future talk, but now it's current and everybody's talking about it. So yeah, every album is different from the next.
Yes, I think that something that is different is that some years ago you were writing about Stalingrad, and now you are writing about artificial intelligence, dependence of technology. And tell me, why is important for the band to address these themes on this album?
Because it's what's going through your mind. And I think nothing is necessary. And I'm not saying you have to write songs about anything. But I believe if I have the choice in writing a song, I want to talk about stuff that interests me and stuff that is current, something that I think about when I watch TV or when I check the news, or then these kind of things inspire us and inspire me to write about. So some people write about nostalgia or some fantasy stuff about demons and witches and all kinds of stuff, but my mind doesn't work that way. So I like to write about stuff that I find interesting.
I am remembering Zombie Apocalypse from To Mean
Yeah.
to Die, and now is Humanoid. And what do you think? Do you think that the mankind will finish as a slave of technology?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of this any more than you do. I think it's just an interesting thing that we observe nowadays. And that's all we can do is it's important to understand that in all these songs, we're not really trying to teach people anything. We don't really foresee the future. I mean, I'm just observing what's going on. And it's an interesting thought to think about. Yeah. I mean, technology in the last 20, 30 years since the digital age, this is if you call it the digital revolution right now. I think that it is going to affect mankind maybe more than the industrial revolution. They always say in the late 1800s, when machines and factories and all this kind of changed the way people lived and the landscape of the cities and all this kind of stuff. Well, I think the digital age has a bigger impact on people, because my God, everything changes and jobs fall away that we used to take for granted. And now there's robots making a bunch of stuff, and now robots are even doing intelligent things where they can create songs or write books or write emails and things that sound like a human had written it. And I don't know, it's a scary thing. It makes you think, am I gonna, like 20 years from now, am I gonna talk to Pablo here, or am I going to talk to a robot? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Is there still going to be people involved?
Yes, I need to confess you that I am an avatar, and this is the artificial intelligence interviewing you now.
Yeah, I'm not even here either. This is just my, my hologram.
Yes, this is the reason why you look like younger than the last time I saw you.
That's right. Exactly. It's all just like, airbrushed.
Something that didn't change is that you continue working with Andy Sneap. You were working with him maybe in the last 10 years since Teutonic invasion. And tell me, are you comfortable? How do you continue working with him?
He's the perfect man for this job, and producing an album is not an easy thing, but he makes it look easy. I mean, when we work with him, it's almost like there's a mutual understanding. It almost feels like a brother. He's almost part of the band at this point, or even I wouldn't even say part of the band, because there's the band and there's Andy. So he's outside of the band, which is good because he can give his honest opinion without getting into any of the internal affairs of every band. You know, there's always different opinions and egos and all this kind of stuff. But he's outside of the band, but at the same time, he feels very, very familiar, like a family member. And I think he understands accept so well, and he understands what we're trying to achieve. And he gives us a perfect sound. So it's a winning team that I wouldn't want to change.
Is he the kind of producer that try to make changes in the guitars or in the lyrics, or he only works with the music, the different sound? Tell me.
No, he makes suggestions, and just enough. You know, it's a fine line. Because I've worked with some producers that get involved too much into the music, and some producers never get involved in the music. They're just basically engineers. They, whatever you want to record, they make it sound good. And that's, you know, there's different approaches to producing. I think Andy is just the right mixture of getting involved and giving his opinion, but he doesn't get in the way of stuff, which is important too. It never feels like it's Andy's record. It always feels like it's an accept record, and Andy is helping, if you know what I mean. He's really pushing us along just enough to not be annoying. But at the same time, he tries to get the best out of us. So that's, yeah, I don't know. I can't speak highly enough of him. He's definitely the right man for the job.
For this new CD, we are going to start talking about the cover of the album. Tell me, now who did the design of the cover? Is this cover have a special meaning for the band, or is related to one song?
You have to understand, okay, here we are. We've written 12 songs, or yeah, whatever. We've written a bunch of songs, but we ended up recording 12 or 11 songs. And then there's always that moment when you have to decide, okay, what are we going to call this album? And then you go through all the songs that you've written, and you think like, all right, which one of those has an image attached to it? And one of the first things that we all noticed is Humanoid. You immediately have a visual image in your head. You know, we have other songs that are called maybe Ravages of Time or Unbreakable. You don't really have an image immediately, but with Humanoid, you have a picture in your mind. So we thought also it sounds really cool as an album title. And that's why we decided on that song as should be the cover song, and that should be the motto of the whole album. And then we brought that to our good friend Yula. He's a digital artist in Hungary. And we said, hey man, this is what we have in mind. The album's supposed to be called Humanoid. Do you have any, why don't you give us some sketches of, like, you know, what do you think a humanoid should look like? And he came with that back with what you see on the cover, and we fine-tuned it a little bit, but it's basically all his work. So he's a really good artist. And I like the fact that he incorporated the Metal Heart logo into it, because in a way this album is a continuation of the concept of Metal Heart from 40 years ago, which is crazy. It's 40 years ago. But yeah, it's the modern version. I mean, if you spin the whole mechanical heart thing any further, then eventually you end up with this robot humanoid concept that we're talking about now.
Your answer made me think that there is another image that it will be very recognizable, that is related to Frankenstein, your song. Yes. And but I think that maybe your song is or Frankenstein now is very different from the original novel. Or I don't know if you remember in the 60s, the Edgar Winter song Frankenstein.
Yeah, I do actually remember. Yeah.
Yes. Tell me about your Frankenstein.
Well, Frankenstein is just another example. It is actually one of Uwe's ideas. Uwe did a bit of songwriting with me on this album, and he came up with this song, something Frankenstein, and we were just goofing around, and the title was Frankenstein. And And at first I wasn't quite sure, is this like something that even fits or does it work? So I don't know, we just didn't think about it too hard. We just went along with it. And of course, it's somewhat related to the idea of humanoid, but the two songs aren't really connected. It's pure coincidence that Uwe came up with this Frankenstein thing. And, then we thought, that sounds cool. Why don't we just write a song about, Mark wrote the lyrics then from the perspective of, being this monster-like creature that, is wakes up in this laboratory and by no fault of his own, scares people. And the poor guy hasn't done anything wrong, but at the same time, everybody thinks he's a monster.
The people say that it's a monster because it's ugly or different. Just,
Right.
yes.
And that's, of course, I mean, you can interpret all kinds of stuff into it, but, we just sort of used this thing as a metaphor, and we were inspired by the story, and it's just, another song. And it's always good to have some sort of images in your head when you write songs, because then lyric ideas come easy. And I'm alive and all these kind of things, they sort of happen when you're on that train of thought, then immediately stuff starts happening. So it's always good then that when you're writing a song, you have a concept or an idea at least, and ideally you even have the words for the chorus right away in your head, because then other stuff starts to happen. It's always very difficult to write a song that's just musical and does have no lyrical context. It's very difficult for me. I like it when sometimes on even on this in for this songwriting sessions, Mark gave me a bunch of finished lyrics, and he said, this is lyrics, you just write whatever song you can make fit.
Mm.
And that's what we did for like Man Up, Straight Up Jack. I think even The Reckoning, there was lyrics by Martin Motnick. So the lyrics were there first, and then you just sit there with your guitar and try to work it into a song. But at least you have a starting point. You know what I mean? You have an inspiration.
Maybe it's my imagination, but I can find on diving into scene some Oriental influences in the melody. Why did you choose this song as a first single?
It's not the first single actually, but it's the opener of the album.
Yes,
And we
that's what I
choose it
tried to
because
say.
it had,
Sorry.
it has, well, because it has a nice little intro and it's very spooky, and it's almost like a call to prayer, at a mosque. It's also almost like when this intro starts, it's like, ooh, the album is about to start. We better start listening. I don't know. I always like when there's a short little intro as a first song. And I've always been a fan of for Oriental melodic lines and such, and you find them in my solos all over the place. So this is just another example of a nice little theme that I came up with, and it seemed to work quite well.
Everybody expect that your classical influences spread here and there in any new recording, like in the classical recordings. What bands or artists beyond heavy metal have influenced the sound of the new album?
Zero. No, I
Contrary.
mean, you have to understand, I don't really listen to music that much. So I don't have a big collection of CDs. I don't really ever listen to other metal bands. But of course, it's naive to think I've not been influenced by. I've been influenced by everybody that I came in contact with over the decades, and especially when you're early in your developing years, teenage years. I think whatever you listen to then will influence you for the rest of your life. And for me, that was as I was a teenager and such. Deep Purple, Judas Priest, AC/DC, then other bands from Britain a lot of times, like Uriah Heep, Status Quo, Queen, Slade, Sweet, I don't know, even Pink Floyd to a degree. I mean, whatever was around in the 70s, I'd say influenced my musical taste. And then, of course, I developed a love for classical music in my early 20s, and it stayed with me ever since. But really, as far as current music, I don't listen too much, to be honest. I mean, what is current nowadays? I don't even know.
Yes, but I was thinking when I ask you this question that maybe you will mention Rachmaninoff or Beethoven or music that is prior to these classical composers.
Yeah, all that stuff influences me heavily, of course, you know, and I like to listen to classical music. And my new partner, girlfriend, Ava Rebecca Rahman, she's a classical violinist, and her and I, we make a lot of music together right now based on classical music. So there's always classical music in my world or around, you know. So I'm constantly influenced by stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff happens subconsciously. I hardly ever listen to anything and then I say, oh, I got to use that somewhere, and then run off. It's just like while I'm writing songs, some ideas pop into my head, and sometimes they are based on existing melodies. A lot of times they're just something that I make up. But we're all influenced by whatever is around us, you know.
Yes. And for example, maybe is that we, the writers, the journalists, are looking for the detail and extreme detail on the song.
I know.
Yes, but for example, in the track that you mentioned previously, Straight Up Jack. So maybe I think that the rhythm look like AC/DC. Tell me about Straight Up Jack.
Yeah, like I said earlier, that song was actually, the lyrics were written by Mark, and he had a special vibe in mind that I mean, he gave me the lyrics, and I started to write song number one, and I sang it straight up, Jack, whatever, however it went, I forget, and I sent it to him, and he said like, yeah, kinda. I thought it was supposed to be a little more upbeat or slower or whatever he said. So then I wrote another song. And he still said, meh, meh. And in the end, we said, okay, why don't I wait until we're together here in Nashville in the studio, and then you sing to me how you want it to be, the rhythm and the speed, and how you just read it to me, basically. And then I sat there with the guitar, and within 10 minutes, the song was done. And it turned out to be, of course, very influenced by AC/DC, because, I mean, this is the type of song that is. And we've always been huge AC/DC fans, and it's no secret that Accept has a lot of influences from that genre, from AC/DC. I mean, even the song Balls to the Wall, there's a lot of people think like that's an AC/DC song, and we've even used, you know, we've done I'm a Rebel back in 1980, which is an actual AC/DC song. So there's a lot of yeah, I don't know, similarity, or a lot of overlap, I guess, in our music.
Yes. In this song, Straight Up Jack, the first riff, when you start the song, let me tell you that the first riff remind me Man on the Silver Mountain, the classic Rainbow song, no?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That would never come to my mind, but hey, whatever. You know, nothing is ever completely new. So, I mean, you're always going to find stuff that reminds you of something else. And I totally think that's legitimate. I mean, I sometimes hear other bands going, think like, God, that sounds a lot like Accept, but that's okay, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with that.
But when you started, you were a follower of Richie Blackmore and his...
Yeah.
Yes?
I was, sure. Yeah. I was a huge Richie Blackmore fan. And Uli John Roth, and, you know, there was other guitar players too, but definitely Richie Blackmore was one of them. Yeah.
Yes. I never imagined that until I listened to this song, but then I start to remember that, for example, sometimes you play some classical music in the heavy, and Richie Blackmore sometimes play some classical licks in the heavy.
Sure.
Wow,
Yeah.
is it the link?
yeah, Richie Blackmore was definitely a very European, very British player, and there's a certain sound, style of music that Europeans like versus Americans, for instance. But definitely, I was more influenced by the British side of things, and definitely Richie Blackmore, and he also had, a lot of classical tendencies and did a lot of classical things. And Uli Roth also, so I guess that's a European thing or German thing. I don't know. Richie Blackmore was, of course, not German, but he had a lot of German connections. I think he was married to a German woman. He lived in Germany for a while, and he was his biggest audience must have been in Germany. So Germans loved Richie Blackmore, much more than I think maybe in some other countries.
You also mentioned Unbreakable, and I think that Unbreakable is the relationship between the band and the fans. So
It is.
tell
It
me
is.
more about the inspiration for this song.
That was a typical riff song that didn't have a good lyrical. That was one of the songs where I mentioned it earlier. When you just sit there and you write some music, and then you try to come up with a word to sing or some lyrical content, and we kept not having the right word. We were just like, we had invincible in this, blah, 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 blah. We kind of had the phrasing in mind, and finally we settled on unbreakable because it hadn't been used. A lot of these words have already been used in other songs, if you know what I mean. You have an idea and it sounds great and you want to sing it, and then you go like, oh shit, that's a song by blah blah blah, so you can't do that. And then we ended up with unbreakable, and then we said, okay, why don't we write it about the concert experience of being with a fan, and we have this bond with our fan community, and and Mark kind of made sense of it all. But at the beginning we just had this one word.
When I listen songs like Unbreakable or No One Gets Out Alive, I imagine, and I'm going to ask you now, for example, when you are writing a song, you are listening to a riff, you say, if I play this riff, I know that the audience will be really wild with this riff or not.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
if you can picture the audience going crazy, then yeah, that's a good inspiration, absolutely. Because I tell you, there's a big difference. I mean, in the studio, you can play songs and you can sort of get into it and you find the perfect groove because you're in a different mindset. A lot of times you're relaxed, I don't know, but then you get on stage and there's this whole life energy and this anticipation and this back and forth between the audience. And then certain songs work better than others. I mean, if they have the right tempo and the right energy, people will love it more than if it's like something that's maybe a little more laid back. Or, I mean, there's a certain, after having done this for years, I can have a fairly good idea of what's going to work well on stage. But at the end of the day, you always have to go out there and give it a try and see how it really feels in the heat of the moment.
When we talked the last time, 2 years ago, you told me that the postponed tour will be done, keeping the same prices, even when 2 years later, the prices of flights, hotels, and venues were more expensive. Finally, the Too Mean to Die tour was fit the expenses.
No, it wasn't a disaster, but it was difficult because exactly what you said, when you make an agreement for a show like today and you figure your expenses and you travel and all this kind of stuff, so you agree on a price, but then you have to wait for 3 years and the prices go up and up and up, but you still don't, your fee has still same, can be a big problem. So unfortunately, everything has gotten so much more expensive nowadays. I don't know if you traveled by plane lately, but all these flights in Europe that used to be like, I don't know, 150 euros, they're now 300, 400, and 500. It's crazy. So of course, when you travel with bands and crew and, the costs go up like crazy.
Have you thought how to solve this situation? the price of the ticket will be higher, or
It has to
play less?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in an ideal world, we'd play we let the audience come to us like a residency. We'd stay in Germany for 1 month, central location, and the audience come to us. But that doesn't quite work the way. We still have to we have to come to the fans, unfortunately.
Yes.
But there's no solution. You just have to make the best you can. I mean, it's just crazy. Everything gets more expensive, unfortunately.
Now, a question that I would like to ask you: how are
Yeah.
your experience as an immigrant in USA?
Oh, interesting. Nobody ever asked that question.
Yes.
Well, luckily, America is a very open country, very welcoming. So you never feel like a foreigner, because as soon as you come in, and I've got dual citizenship, so I'm both American and German at this point. But you never feel like a foreigner. You always feel like an American. Once you're in, you're part of the group. Where in some countries, especially in Europe, like in Germany, there's people who lived in Germany for 30, 40 years, and there's still some people say, well, he's a foreigner. But in America, it's different. Once you're in, you're an American, and I mean, you're like, that feels very good. But at the same time, I can just open my mouth and people say, where y'all from? They know that I'm not born in the United States. They can hear my accent, and they know, to them, I'm very German still, and to my German friends, they think like I'm a bit American now. So I'm somewhere in between. I'm like a bastard.
I have read that ASAP has sold maybe 17 million sales worldwide. This is an special pressure for you when you need to create a new CD, a new recording?
Yeah, I mean, but you put that pressure on yourself because you want to make the best album you can. It's not because you've sold so many albums and you feel like you have to match what you've done in the past. Because we're kind of at this point in our career now where, we're so lucky to have a strong following. We can go on worldwide tours. We make albums that people like. So we don't really have to prove to ourselves or to anybody anything. If anything, we have to satisfy our own hunger and own expectations. I've got very high expectations about myself and about the band, but that comes from my own self, not so much from whatever sales figures we have. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yes. You are usually living in Nashville, no?
Yeah.
Yes. And taking account that Nashville is a very musical city and is mostly country music, any country rhythm become or are coming into ASAP music?
Oh man,
No.
no, there's no chance of that. I mean, I'm not in Nashville because I like the local country scene or whatever. I'm here because it's a perfect place for musicians. So, like a couple of days ago, I had lunch with an amazing producer, and we talked about, I don't know, the world of music today and marketing and all kinds of general things. I mean, we have great people here in our crew. There's fantastic studios here, bus companies. Anything you need as a musician is here. And, there's this old saying, if you are a fisherman, you better not live in the mountains because you need to be where the fish are. You need to live near the ocean. If you want to fish, then you need to be where the fish are.
Yes.
So Nashville is a good place for a musician, no matter the type of music you do.
Are there any special collaboration on Humanoid, or you did, as usual, only the band?
It's only the band. I mean, we had a good friend of mine sometimes sings some backing vocals. His name is Clay Van. So we have people come in and do a little guest appearance, but there's no other local musicians. But a lot of the bands and the guys in the band, they all live here in Nashville. I mean, 4 of us, which that's great.
The last time you were in Madrid, I was in the audience, very, very close to the stage. But what I will say, the next time I will bring a poster, and the poster won't say Ace, no, will say Picasso. And then you say, wow.
Picasso, there you go. That's good. All right, my
Picasso.
friend.
Yes. So it was a pleasure talking to you, Wolf.
Same here. Okay, keep up the good work. Keep painting, please.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.